and welcome to the Divorced Women's Guide podcast, where we talk about the things us divorcees are thinking, but not always talking about, as we turn our divorce into the best gift we've ever been given. And I do so with a little bit of sass and a whole lot of class. I am your host, Wendy Sterling, founder of the Divorce Rehab. I am here to support you in this transition phase of your life so you can start your new best chapter on your own terms. After all, that's what I did after my own divorce. And now it is my mission to change the conversation around divorce and help you see why your divorce, like mine, was the best gift you ever received. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of my podcast, The Divorced Woman's Guide. And today's episode, I'm actually recording just a few short days ago. And it was inspired by something that happened just last week. And the reason that I actually decided to throw this episode in is because I had an overwhelming response from people on my email list, because I had sent out an email last Friday that, I kid you not, you guys, I had the most responses I've ever received as a reply to an email that I have sent out. And it was something that I shared from my own personal experience, and it was vulnerable. And it was so moving to so many people that I knew I had to create a podcast episode around it. So it had to do with an event that happened last week. It was my oldest son graduated from 8th grade. And it was part of another first that I experienced post-divorce. And it was also a day that required me to spend multiple hours with my ex-husband and my 2 children. And part of that was in a car doing a virtual culmination, as well as a drive-through ceremony to receive his diploma. And so I wanted to first start out by reading you the email that I wrote to my list to recap what my experience was all about. And then afterwards, I'm going to share just some of my own insights around how it is that I can help you guys to move through your own milestones that you will experience or are continuing to experience. So here goes. Yesterday was a really hard day for me. Another first post-divorce, and a reminder of the future I dreamed about that was no longer a reality. My son's graduation from 8th grade. And because of the way of the world and the rules of the school district, culmination was not only virtual, it also involved a drive-by to pick up his diploma and awards, and we were limited to 1 car per family, which meant I had to drive with my ex-husband. The buildup to yesterday was awful. Anxiety, stress, sadness, anger, you name it. It was all raging inside of me like the perfect storm. I played out so many scenarios in my head and tried to plan for replies to questions and how I would handle conversations, aka storytelling. My inner critic was so loud, and suddenly I realized I was allowing my past to dictate my present, something I vowed to shift out of whenever it happened. And when I thought of my present, I remembered how much I love my life. And the day was about my son, not my ex or me or my divorce. I started my morning doing yoga in my private Facebook group, Divorce Rehab. And part of our meditation at the end had to do with blessings. Not only blessings for those we love, but for those we may not love as much, if at all. And in that moment, I chose to send my ex blessings. Blessings for peace, joy, and surrender. Because what we put out, we actually get back. And in that moment, I felt him receive my blessings, and I felt it in return, in my heart. A warmth like a warm blanket being placed around you in the cold, and it felt comforting, and immediately brought my body to ease. The tension of the day was released. My jaw and neck felt relaxed. My stomach no longer in knots, and I could breathe deeply and calmly again. It was such a powerful moment. We forget that love always wins. The anger is like drinking our own poison, hoping they will die, as my dear friend Gabrielle Hartley writes about and says in her Better Apart book. And anger hurts us and sends us down a rabbit hole we can't get out of for quite some time. And the minute you turn that anger into love, everything shifts. Everything. I had two choices: dread the day and be angry, or embrace the love we have for our son and send my ex blessings. I chose the latter and would again in a heartbeat. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't let myself acknowledge what comes up and ignore it. As you heard, I named it, felt it, and chose to shift. And you know what? I was me the entire afternoon. And for the first time, I saw him, the person he has always been. And it confirmed how grateful I am to not be married to him anymore, and how much I love my new life and who I am, who I discovered on the other side of my divorce. Someone who is loving, independent, confident, beautiful inside and out, a badass, powerful, and empathetic. And so can you. Are you open to the possibility? And then I asked my list to please reply to my email and share with me what might be possible for you. And I invite you to do the same. Because at the end of the day, I am no different from any of you. I was married for 15 years to my college sweetheart. We were together for 22 before my entire world came crashing around me unexpectedly. And it crashed hard. And here I stand 4 years later, healed, happy, and loving my life. And you get to have that too. Hey, it's Wendy. I wanted to take a quick break from the conversation to say thank you for listening and to also share something really exciting that I am launching on June 9th. So I am putting together another free online summit called Beyond Divorce: Discover the Secrets to Disconnect, Set Boundaries, and Move Forward. So if you're somebody who's thinking about, or perhaps you're in the process of divorce, or even on the other side, and you're feeling stuck because the courts are closed and you think that you can't move forward, well, I'm here to tell you that that is just not true. The goal of this summit is to support you and to help you navigate the emotional side that you are currently struggling with. I'm interviewing over 33 experts about how to support your kids, how to set boundaries, co-parenting with a narcissist, how to practice self-compassion, how to be financially independent, conscious co-parenting, how to stay healthy, and so much more. I have had so many aha moments during all of these interviews, and I just know you will too. Oh, and by the way, each expert is providing a free gift just for you. So please visit beyonddivorcesummit.com to register for free. And now let's jump back into the conversation. So my point here, you guys, is that it doesn't matter whether you wanted the divorce, you saw the divorce coming or not, right? The point of this is that we always have the power to choose where it is that we want to be. We have the power to choose to move on. And, so many times our voices in our head or people in our lives are constantly saying to us, like, you've got to move on, let it go, get over it. And the problem is that if you are still in that place, right? If you are not allowing yourself to move forward, well, then how are you going to get to your past life, right? If you're constantly thinking about the what ifs, if you're living in a place of anger, you're not going to move on, right? But let me ask you guys a question, because I think that I'm really big on definitions, as you know, and I want to ask you guys, like, what does it mean to you to actually move on after your divorce? Because for each of us, we have different definitions, right? And that's because we're all coming from very different and unique situations that we are facing and have to overcome. But at the end of the day, we do all have some common threads, right? This is what I say around like common themes. And I want to talk about a couple of them below around how it is that you can start moving into living your best life after divorce. So the first one is to really accept where you are, right? You heard me talk about that in our story, or in my story, excuse me, the email that I sent out. And acceptance, I'm not talking about like giving up or resigning, right? What I'm talking about is actually acknowledging the reality of what has happened, right? The change that has taken place, right? And actually being proactive in choosing to engage with life. Okay, you have a choice. You have a choice to engage with life and create something new and beautiful, or you can choose to live in your past. But if you accept where you are, you're actually choosing your future. And it means that you're choosing a vision to focus on that there are endless possibilities for, right? And when you do that, you release yourself from answering all these questions around why, right? Like, I didn't ask to be here, or it's not fair, or I want to get back at him, right? Listen, don't get me wrong, those feelings are totally normal and natural. But you don't have to stay there, right? And even just acknowledging them, don't beat yourself up, just acknowledge them, release the power around them, and then you get to move through them. And you get to move on, but you have to accept where you are today. And believe me, when you do, life is so much more beautiful, and you start focusing on the positives in your life, because we have so many that we don't give light to, right? And another milestone is really to know how to start looking after you, right? We get so overwhelmed with all the emotions around our divorce. And, part of that too is having to uproot our children. We're moving, financial situations, right? But we're thinking about so many other people instead of really thinking about ourselves. And this is really the time where you get to be intentional, right? You heard me be very intentional around my thoughts last week. And listen, I didn't love that that's where we were, right? That wasn't what I envisioned. It wasn't like I got married and thought, oh, and my son graduates 8th grade, we're going to be divorced. But if you don't allow yourself to just come to a place where this is where you are, and I get to take care of myself in that moment, sometimes what that means is just acknowledging what's coming up, right? It's my life and no one else is going to live it for me, right? I did that. I married a man who I depended upon to create my life for me. And I vowed to no longer do that. And the freedom that I was able to recognize in that moment was overwhelming. And you all deserve to feel that too. You deserve to feel good, but you've got to stop waiting for someone to take action to let you feel that way, right? You're giving your power away. And it's really important for you to step into your own power and realize that you are the one that gets to choose and live your life. And if you're continuing to harbor anger and resentment towards somebody, are you really doing that? Are you really living your best life by choosing to continue to be angry at somebody? Because what ends up happening is they win. You're letting them win. You're letting them see that they hurt you and that they ruined your life. And that's where the grieving part comes in, right? I was talking about how you have to grieve to be able to heal, right? You're grieving so many deaths. You're grieving the death of the dreams of your future, the family you thought you were going to have, right? The hopes that you had, the family that you had worked really hard to create, the somewhat teamwork, right? As a couple, the image of you as a couple, right? And this is where you getting to heal comes in, and you get to be intentional and lean into whatever comes up, because ultimately there is a benefit to you, right? And it's only natural that we always replay things in our minds, and Lord knows, like, I did that myself, right? Like, I did that for a long time. But in that moment last week, I remembered what work I did and how it was that I got to where I am today, right? Where I was standing, what it is that I got to feel, that the thoughts and the accomplishments that I had made, that I had also decided in that moment to focus on the accomplishments of my son. This wasn't about me, right? But I got to also take care of myself in that moment and become his mom instead of focusing on who I was in my marriage and how that relationship looked like between the two of us. And that is what leads into the next milestone, which is really allowing yourself to be released from your ex-spouse, right? Regardless of whether or not your marriage was a happy one, you were linked and joined at some point, right? And you were linked and joined in different ways: mind, body, and spirit. And regardless of how many levels you were connected, every level you affect one another, right? There's an impact on these levels. And it shows up in different ways for yourself. But it's really important and so crucial for you to recognize that you don't have to stay tethered to them anymore, right? It's almost like, the way that I describe it is that I always felt like I was on either, it's like almost like I was on this yo-yo or like this rubber band, right? And there was a point where I felt like I was moving myself forward, but then I would get jolted back to him when something would come up and I would get angry or let him get to me. And then I would go on with my life and keep going. And then something would happen and I would get jolted back. And it's like you're on this constant yo-yo because you're allowing your ex to still have this hold over you. And what I've come to realize that has to do with is that you're still seeing the world through the lens of who you were as a couple, right? Or even through the lens of your spouse, which if you're anything like me, that's how I saw my life, right? All my happiness, all my views of everything came through him. And what ended up happening for me until I realized this and started to create my own lens was that I stopped living in a state of limbo, right? I stopped living in this place of, well, am I married? Am I not married? Am I separated? Like you start living based on a status instead of just living as you. And if you want to call that a free single person, great. But once you actually cut that cord and release yourself from them, you start to see the world so differently. And you also start to see your ex very differently, right? You heard me say that in the car. And we don't spend a lot of time together at all. And we communicate via email. And the last time that we actually had to spend time together was earlier this year during some school events that were happening as our son was applying to high school. And even then, we weren't really in each other's proximity for that long, but we haven't really ever been around each other. And so I never really had the opportunity to test and see if that rubber band was finally cut. And it was so empowering to see myself as me instead of on that rubber band, still connected to that yo-yo. And it enabled me to see that I actually, and this leads to the last milestone, which is that I successfully reestablished my own identity away from him. Okay. And it took work. It took work and it took persistence and it took accountability and it took tears. Okay. I cried a lot. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it was super easy and I'm sitting here on the other side. It was a piece of cake, but I had to come to a place where my life and my energy got to be on me instead of playing the what if game, right? And I so badly wanted to create a new life and I wanted to find myself and reestablish who I was. And whether or not you had kids or you were married or in a long-term relationship, whatever it is, there was a you that existed outside of that many of us forgot, let go of, just ignored. And the you that exists after divorce will still remain regardless of what your status is. And you get to explore and figure out who he or she is. And I would like to take a stand for you and say that you get to figure out who the new real you is again. And that version of you gets to be nurtured and encouraged to shine in ways that you have been holding back. And it enables you to really start becoming really clear on who it is that you are. And the more that you focus on who it is that you are now, the less you focus on who you were supposed to be, or the family or the couple that you were supposed to be. And you get to that place where you start realizing that you are living your best life after divorce, right? And you start seeing the new choices that you're making in your life to be the ones that you want. And I will tell you guys, when I was sitting in that car, I had such a smile on my face, and I was sitting and living in the moment and talking to my kids in the car. And my ex-husband was choosing to be on his phone and work. And I could tell, we'd been together for so long. I know him so well still. And I could tell and just feel his energy that day. And I felt a conflicted energy from him, a conflicted energy of him wanting to be present and wanting to be excited. And that was conflicting with, I should be working. I'm taking time away. I've got all this stuff building up. And then there was also tension coming from his new family. And I felt almost like that triad going on with him. And I felt so bad. And I was trying to kind of start to engage him in the car and, start talking about things together or playing games, because we were literally sitting in a line. It took us an hour and a half to get around the block, a really big block, to get my son's diploma. So we were sitting there for a long time together. And it's so powerful when you know who you are, you love who you are, you love the life that you've created for yourself, and you stop thinking about what could have been, and you get present to what is, and you get present to the love that you have for yourself, and you get present to the love that you have for your kids, and you choose love instead of anger. I could have sat there and been angry that, because of the choice that you made, we're not a family anymore, because, you're choosing to be on your phone, you're ruining this experience for everybody. And it wasn't. And it's actually about, he's the one losing, right? And I allowed myself to lose because that was his experience. And I'm no longer allowing him to do that. I didn't let him create an environment for me or my kids last week where we all felt like we were losing something because we were choosing to be together in that car. It was about choosing love. It was how fortunate we are that we get to sit in this car. My son is graduating, how beautiful it is that we can even be in this car. And, that whole time I was sending him compassion and love and surrender. And I wished that he was more present with the rest of us, because what was happening in that car was really fun. So I encourage you guys, because what ends up happening is you miss out on life. And how much more of your life are you willing to miss out on? I'm not saying that these first milestones are something that are little or that you should ignore. The very opposite. You get to acknowledge and you get to feel whatever is coming up. But then you also get to shift into a place of gratitude and a place of love. And it is so much more valuable and enriching and fulfilling. So I would love to hear what you guys heard from this episode. I would love to hear what is possible for you. Answer that question for me. What is possible for you to come from love instead of fear and anger against your ex? Or maybe there's something coming up that you're going to make a different choice now leading into something. Just think about the possibilities. That's all I'm asking. And please reach out. I'd love to hear from you. All of my contact information is in the show notes, but you can email me directly at wendy@wendysterling.net. I'm so grateful for your time, and thank you so much for tuning into this episode today. Sending you lots of love, light, and joy always. Mwah. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorced Woman's Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this episode with someone you know or spread the word on social media. This is how I reach more divorcees around the world and provide them with the support they need to create their next best life. And I would also love to continue the conversation with you. So please friend me on Facebook, join my private Facebook group, The Divorce Rehab, and follow me on Instagram at Divorce Rehab with Wendy. I'll see you next time.